three of you already. Let's see here. Let's talk a little bit about the movie I watched this morning, just for a minute while everybody gets in here. So I finally got my TV. A lot of you have been knowing that I've been waiting to get a TV. My old one had finally just like taken a final crap on me, like the buttons weren't working, nothing. So we finally got a TV, a nice big one. It's beautiful. We got it in yesterday and got it all set up, and we watched Jurassic Park last night for our first film, and that was a lot of fun. um, what is he video feed dropped? Well, hopefully it comes back. It looks like there's 35 of it in here now, but we watched that last night. That was a lot of fun. um, but then this morning we watched Animal Farm, the old school Animal Farm. And what's interesting about that film is that it was created, the one that everybody knows, the old school cartoon. It was actually created by the CIA. They were the ones who produced that film. Now, of course, they didn't write the book, but they did produce that film. And I thought it was a pretty interesting little story that goes behind it, as you see the cycle of like socialism and how the people get together, created like this great idea, tried to make everything work well, and then all of a sudden corruption comes in and destroys the whole situation, and then everybody gets pissed and revolts. And it's kind of funny how that kind of system just keeps going, playing it out over and over again. But anyway, what I really wanted to talk about was the article I left down in the description. Hopefully I left the link down in there. Sometimes I forget to leave the link down in the description, but anyway, it's an article talking about Amazon and how they are closing or shuttering many warehouses across the United States. And this is not a surprise. This is something that I was actually predicting quite a while ago, when I was thinking about the bullwhip effect and how people are misunderstanding how much demand that there really is within the system, and how people end up behaving within the ideas that they think is taking place, but not what is actually taking place. And now the bullwhip effect is really what I'm talking about when it comes to the misunderstanding of what's happening throughout the distribution network. And this is something that I've talked about quite a bit. It was something that we had brought up really early on in the pandemic. It was something that I had noticed working retail myself, and it was the viewers who had actually commented. Actually, it was one particular viewer who said, what you're describing is the bullwhip effect. And sure enough, after I did some research into it, that is exactly what was taking place. Now, a lot of people are starting to recognize a lot of the evidence of that bullwhip effect. And I noticed it in lumber. But if you're not familiar with the bullwhip effect, really what the bullwhip effect is that there is distortions within the distribution line. And because people cannot get a clear view of what is actually taking place within all these sales, a lot of times there is misunderstandings of what orders are real and what orders are just actual, like, I shouldn't necessarily say fake, but aren't necessarily reality. And now a great way to kind of understand this is the allocations that I was experiencing. And so if you can understand it like in the sense that when I go to order something, so I ordered this trim, and this is something I talked about quite a bit. I ordered this 5/4x4 finger jointed trim. It's very common for exterior siding, and it came up in short supply. And typically we would order like 30 pieces of this stuff, and they said, well, you're only going to get 10. And because we're in short supply ourselves, we want to make sure that we can distribute out to everybody. So even though you ordered 30, you're only going to get 10 pieces. And it was like you're being allocated against. So what we end up doing is ordering like 100 pieces instead, right? So that we can hopefully get our 30 pieces that we really want. Well, if everybody within the industry starts doing this, all of a sudden you start seeing this like overwhelming demand for this particular product, even though it's not really 100 pieces we want 30, but since we're getting allocated, we order even more. So the distribution network doesn't necessarily see that as like what it really is. They don't see that the store really wants 30. They think the store wants 100. And if many stores do this, then it can be like this overwhelming demand for this particular product that doesn't really exist. So that's one way that it can actually that you can end up with this distortion within the distribution network. Another way was the way that I described it with Fernco fittings and these plumbing fittings. They're just a little rubber coupling fitting with hose clamps on each side of it, and it's used a lot in like underground work or just repair work or groundwork and stuff like that. So these guys who were in need of this particular part to complete their projects were in, came up in short supply. They couldn't find it. They would come in and they would buy everything off the shelf. Well, when that happens, my computer doesn't recognize that these people are panic buying. That's what's happening there, is that they're in fear that they won't be able to get it. They were in short supply. They couldn't finish their project. It held up $10,000 over a $10 part. So the next time this part came in, they just bought all of them so they would never be short of this particular part. So again, like the distribution network doesn't quite recognize what is happening there. They don't understand that this customer was a panic buyer of this particular product. And now the algorithms are saying, hey, this particular store or all these stores are in need of this particular product. We need to ramp up our manufacturing of this particular thing. And so you could see where that also adds to the geez, I'm having a whole hard, I can't talk today, guys. I'm sorry. This is adding to the distortion within the distribution network, as people don't really recognize that it's a panic buy and not necessarily like a real consumer demand taking place as they buy everything off the shelf. And then like another case that it can happen with this bullwhip effect is like this actually happened to me the other day, where a customer had ordered some beams from me, right? He ordered a couple of 6x8 14 beams. Nothing special, but we didn't have them in stock, so I ordered them. Well, this guy was like, he was in a panic to try and get these things so he could frame his wall up, because now he was basically stopped without these beams. Well, I didn't know it at the time when he ordered from me, because when they finally came in, I said, hey man, your beams are arrived. He said, oh, I'm sorry, man, I'm gonna have to cancel that order. I got them someplace else. Well, what he did is that he ordered them from a bunch of different yards, and the first yard to get it in, he took them from and then canceled it from everybody else. So now all these yards had this order coming in. He created this overwhelming consumer demand for this particular product, but really he didn't want to. He didn't want all those people to actually get the product in. He only wanted one of them to actually get it in. He didn't care about the other ones, but he didn't care which one got it first, so he ordered from everybody. But then everybody goes out there and starts to order to try and get this product in for him, not realizing that he was only going to buy it from one person. I mean, he knew it, but nobody else knew that. And so this too can add distortions into the distribution networks. So when this all started to take place, all these type of scenarios happened during the pandemic as there was a lockdown in distribution. So like there was nobody really distributing in the way that they were normally accustomed to. So like the efficiency died off as there was less truck drivers and less train operation and stuff like that happening. Well, that zapped all the inventory, and when the inventory disappears, then you start having real problems trying to reestablish that distribution. Well, part of that distribution, or reestablishing that distribution, man, how many times am I going to say that word? Anyway, trying to reestablish that was very difficult because it was a just-in-time delivery service, right? So there was no like warehouses to go to get the items from. It was just like you order it and then it traveled on a ship until it got to your particular destination. And hopefully there was something in transit already that you could get as far as, quickly arriving to your location, instead of having like, hey, put it in a box in China and try and get it to you. So that was the just-in-time delivery service. Well, that broke down miserably, right? And everybody started suffering from that. So they were like, okay, well, we need to have a more resilient distribution network. And that's where the idea of building these warehouses came in. But the problem with building warehouses is that even though it's a much hardier distribution network as far as like the delivery of the items go, you don't have to put it in a box in China and wait for it to arrive. You can just pull it from the warehouses that are more local to your area. The only problem with it is that it is not nearly as efficient or cost effective as the just-in-time delivery service. So this is really where the problem is going to start to arise, is that as the network broke down and the demand for these warehouses increased, all these warehouses started to get built, or the projects started to actually just get started, like the future idea of them. And so there was this big demand for all these warehouses as the just-in-time distribution fell apart. The demand for warehouses increased. Well, that's not nearly as efficient. So as the demand for those starts to decrease, I guess, so to say, we're going to start finding where there's either abandoned projects like Amazon is, like the article is talking about with Amazon here, or projects that just simply are malinvestments altogether, where we have all these warehouses that got built that don't even get used. Okay. Anyway, I've babbled on long enough. What are you guys talking about? Multi-blocks of warehouses just built in how come I can't say it? Down in California. I'm having a heck of a time talking today, guys. I'm sorry. Amazon just finished construction, a massive warehouse in, surprise, Arizona. We have an election in 2 months now. That could be fun. Yeah. Okay. Amazon is losing money with COVID depression. They only focus on the stock. They just split and they keep splitting. Why does a credit freeze? What does a credit freeze mean, and are we going to get one? A credit freeze, that is basically when, I don't know if credit could actually freeze to the point that it would actually lock up altogether. It just gets to a point where nobody would really be willing to take out a loan because the interest rates would be so high. So ultimately, a credit freeze is where banks can no longer lend any money. Like they can't borrow, they can't lend, like the whole credit market freezes up. And we saw something begin to happen. There was a start to the credit freezing taking place back in the great financial crisis, with the money markets starting. That's where it started. Like all of a sudden that locked up, where the money market managers were no longer going to take in any more cash for it. They could not pay out any. They were like locking up, and that is like the first start to like lending out there within the like business industries and stuff. So like short-term business loans and stuff like that start at the money market accounts or the money markets, and if they freeze up, the rest of the markets start to freeze up after that. So if it was to occur today, I don't see necessarily like a freezing up of the financial markets. We saw something kind of get exciting back in September of 2019. But the Federal Reserve and their repo facility pretty much kind of kept things going almost immediately by, getting the standing repo facility. Well, it wasn't standing at the time. They just opened up the repo window and basically started adding a lot of cash and taking treasuries out of the banking system and adding cash to it. So with that standing repo facility, it makes it a little bit more difficult for the credit markets to just freeze up, because the money markets also have access to that account as well. So I don't know. I guess if the Federal Reserve tightened up liquidity so much that the demand for cash just went through the roof and interest rates went high, then people just couldn't afford to take out loans. That would like freeze up the credit, the financial markets as well. But I don't necessarily see that happening at this point. Not in the United States. I could see it happening in other places. All right. You got to make sure we take away that free speech with some moderators was mean babysitters. Huh. Never seen the chat so toxic. My advice, make a few of your longtime subscribers moderators. Wow, is there people out there giving me a hard time? They always do. So Camaro. I don't know. All right, here we go. Actually, I do have. Where's Lord Humongous? He's a moderator. The Fed now allows people to draw from the Federal Reserve directly. Do we still need retail banks? Now, that's kind of an interesting question, because the Federal Reserve, like you think about it, they can't necessarily like inject money directly into the system. That's not necessarily like within their charters. That would be monetizing the debt if they were to, like, say, go right to the Treasury and buy the treasuries. The Federal Reserve buys treasuries from the secondary market. They buy them for the primary dealers. And so when you think about the Fed Now account and people having direct access to the Fed, it's like as if they had a Fed account, but it's not like the Federal Reserve can then just print money up and inject it into the accounts of the people. I mean, not saying that they couldn't establish a law that does that, but at this time they really don't have that. I mean, if they were to just print up money and just inject it right into those accounts, then, like I said, that would be going against the Federal Reserve's charter, or it'd be monetizing the debt if they were to use treasuries to back that debt or to back that money. And I just don't see how they're going to do that at this point legally. Now, I could see if there was a crisis situation within the monetary system, that there isn't already laws that are written that can be voted on that will give them that sort of power, and probably fairly quickly. Not saying that ain't the case, but until then, I'm still kind of curious on how it is that they're supposed to inject this idea of using either a digital currency or even a digital platform for doing transactions with. Anyway, there was super chat. Thank you so much, Johnny Midas, for the $10. Appreciate your channel, Simon. Thank you very much. I appreciate the $10. It's very nice of you. Hey, Simon, what do you see in the near future for U.S. truck drivers who are owner-operators? Things sound pretty grim to me. Yeah, and they sound pretty grim to me, too. I think if you're a well-established trucker, as far as even a truck owner-operator, somebody who isn't too heavily indebted, you're probably going to make it through the downturn pretty good. But there is a lot of people who had overexpanded their business during the pandemic as far as the distribution demand going way up. So these truck drivers, these established businesses had, expanded. They hired more drivers, bought more equipment, did the things that they needed to do in order to fulfill that demand. Well, now the demand is disappearing and the debts are still there. So they've taken out money to expand their companies, and now it's like a malinvestment. It was one that should never have happened in the first place. Those owner operators who kind of, held tight through the run up of demand, and just kind of continued on with business as normal and didn't take on a lot of debt during that time. Hopefully they can weather the storm, as there's going to be a downturn in the rates that they are paid for hauling. And eventually that'll turn around again, but how long that takes and how far it goes is anybody's guess. But you're right, it's not going to be pretty for them. All right, can you elaborate on the car repo market? Thanks. Yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more going on. I'm still waiting to see something firsthand. Like, I'm reading a lot of articles on it, but that's the same thing that you guys can do. I was waiting to see something firsthand or hear from, somebody that knows a little bit more about it, that I could actually get some firsthand, understanding of what's going on as far as the used car repo thing goes. But I really haven't experienced it, personally yet. So outside of just, going off of some articles and things that, we have predicted in the past, because I really do think that there's going to come a moment here in the future where we're going to start seeing layoffs rise and the unemployment is going to go up. At that point, people are going to get rid of those expensive cars. You don't need a vehicle, right? A lot of people need a vehicle to get to work, but you don't need an expensive vehicle. And there's a lot of people who had taken out a lot of debt during that time because they had all this stimulus money, and they're thinking, man, I got all this stimulus money, can go out and get a big old, new truck or whatever. And now the new truck just guzzles the gas, and it's expensive to go anywhere, and so now this vehicle is just a burden on them, and they want to get rid of it. Whether you stop making payments or try to sell it, one way or the other, you just want to get rid of this thing. And usually during recession and downturns, those vehicles are the first one to stop making payments on them because you just don't need them. I drive a $500 car, and I'm pretty happy with this thing considering I don't have to make any payments on it. If you have a fleet, price should not be an issue. All right. I've seen the used mountain bike market go down drastically. Yeah, because you can imagine during the lockdowns, people, if you're not doing anything, for us, I don't know about where you're at, but for us, we're kind of in a remote area. So there's a lot of places like you can go hiking and stuff and find remote areas to be, like you are nowhere near anybody. So mountain biking is kind of one of those things. Like, you know, you could like there's logging roads you could be on for this days. I mean, you weren't supposed to be out and about and doing that thing either, but I mean, people were doing it anyway. They just weren't going to the stores and stuff. So I could see where the need for mountain bikes or the demand for mountain bikes would really increase during that time. But after you've done that and you've owned the bike, like there's no real need to buy another bike or keep buying bikes, especially if you're not like really big into that sort of thing for being like a hobby or something. Like once you buy a mountain bike, you really don't need to buy anymore. That's it. You know, you're done. And so the demand for bikes shoots up, you know, and then manufacturing goes up for it because everybody's gotten this demand for bikes, but then it's not really there, you know. Chip industry is so oversaturated. Yeah, and it's going to be. Chips way too much sodium. Yeah, they're saturated in salt, huh? Is there enough educated Americans to work fabs facilities? Absolutely, there is. I can ask my friend. She's a repo collection agent. Yeah, that would be interesting. Have her send me an email on her thoughts. That would be fun. All right, 520 of you up in here. Be sure and go and hit that like button, the thumbs up. It'll grab the video. YouTube will grab the video and start spreading it around for everybody to come in and start chatting with us here. It really helps out. Simon, have you been following Lynn Alden? I haven't, but I really should go and check up on some of the things that she says. My mom listens to as much Lynn Alden as she can take in, but no, I haven't. You know, about 3 years ago, I turned off a lot of the YouTubers that I had typically listened to. All my favorites that I mean, and they got good information. It's not that I don't want the information that they put out. It's just that I had found myself kind of mimicking a lot of what other YouTubers were saying, and you know, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to just be a parrot. You know, I want to have like my own thoughts, my own ideas of what's going on in the economy. So I had to turn off a lot of those guys and just read the news articles and follow the Fed speeches and just kind of go with my own ideas of what it is that I feel is taking place within the economy, just to make sure that I'm holding true to my own. So no, I really haven't listened to much of like George Gammon or Peter Schiff or Lynn or Lynette or any of those people, but I encourage everybody to go and listen to those people. I mean, you should definitely go and listen to all those YouTubers out there because they have some really good information. But I personally just kind of turned it all off just so I could, you know, make sure I was coming up with my own. Let's see here. Smart move. Yeah, thank you. I was just informed that lots of people in Colorado are moving to California due to job offers from Amazon. Yeah, and I would be concerned about that because you're going to find that, you know, the job offers were awesome during the height of the overwhelming consumer demand that really wasn't there, the fake overwhelming consumer demand. There was a lot of job offers happening there at the same, you know, at the same idea that they were building these warehouses, right? I mean, if you're going to build a warehouse, you need somebody to work them, so you're going to build a warehouse and you're going to offer people jobs at the same time. But now you realize I don't need the warehouse. Well, then you don't need the people to work the warehouse. That isn't, they're going to be there, right? You know, so I would be concerned working for Amazon right now, at least during the time of the quantitative tightening. During that, anything that's within the distribution network, not saying that there's not going to be good jobs in there, because there will be good jobs. I mean, you're going to find, you know, there's always opportunity everywhere you look, but during the quantitative tightening, that's going to be very concerning for taking on like a new position at a new location kind of thing, because that's not the environment in which that things go well. Those are the hard times. After that, like, those would be the good times. And what I mean by good times is just easy flow credit, right? Easy credit money, the hard credit, you know, it's hard to get it. So when there's easy money, flow of money, easy credit, then, you know, expansion happens quite fast. You know, the housing market goes up and stocks go up and everything goes up. But during the quantitative tightening, it's quite the opposite. And it's going to last. Quantitative tightening is going to last a lot longer than what people are anticipating. I mean, everybody seems to think that the Federal Reserve is going to like reverse course almost immediately. I doubt it. I very seriously doubt them reversing course immediately. And in fact, I was reading in an old Federal Reserve speech from like, I don't know, I think it was like July, the beginning of July from 2019. Um, who was it? Clarita was given the speech. Anyway, talking about monetary policy back then, and even then they were talking about average inflation. Like they knew back then that the inflation expectation was anchored too low. He even said it in that speech in July of 2019 that the inflation expectation was too low and that they were going to have to do something about getting inflation up higher. And part of that, and this is what's interesting about it, is that even in that speech, they said that they were going to have to let monetary policy run longer than what you would typically expect them to do, meaning that they were going to hold interest rates lower for longer to try and establish that inflation, to get that inflation expectation to run extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time. I mean, he didn't say it like that in that speech, but that's what he was implying on. And then the same thing's going to work in the opposite. Because the inflation is running extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time, they're going to keep the interest rates elevated even during a time in which that you would expect them to lower interest rates. So we're going to go into a downturn and they're going to keep the interest rates elevated, right? And they're going to use this like, we're determined, right? But that's not, I mean, they're not necessarily determined. I mean, I'm sure they're determined, whatever, but they said that they were going to let monetary policy run longer than what they would anticipate because of the, what was it, the time differences or whatever. It's like, you by the time, like, the effects of raising the interest rates takes its course and then gets into the economy, by that time people are like pointing at the Federal Reserve and saying, look at what they're doing right now and what it's doing to the economy, when really what they're doing to the economy is stuff that they did to it 6 months ago or even a year ago. But everybody wants to point at the Federal Reserve and say, look what they just did to the economy, and there's nothing that they can do right now that's going to do anything to the economy. What they do right now will affect the markets immediately, and that's very different. A lot of people, they want to look at like the Dow Jones and say this is the economy, and it's not. That's the markets, and it's actually not even the markets. It's 30 companies. So, when you're looking at like the economy, you have to look at like a lot of different stuff. You have to look at commodities. You have to look at what the bond market is doing. I mean, to me, like most of the economy is wrapped up inside of the bond market. What takes place with the 10-year takes place with most loans out there, whether it be a car loan or a house loan or credit cards, but it establishes the interest rates, or it doesn't necessarily establish the interest rates. What should I say? It's like predicts the interest rates on where they're going to go. It's like, everything follows the 10-year. So that's more of an indicator of what's going to happen in the economy than the Dow is. The Dow is just the markets. But everybody looks at that because that's what's, affects their money. That's what, affects their, gives them the wealth effect. If the Dow goes up, they feel rich. If it goes down, they feel poor. And it's funny how that works. All right. A house, 23 years of interest, plenty of time for them to steal the house. Are you, let's see here, must be talking to somebody. The Chinese economy is slowing the pandemic, but they are creating a currency to rival the dollar. Again, like, I don't know. There is a lot that needs to be done for a world currency to take place. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't love for it to happen, and then they're not, and I'm not saying that they're not doing things that are leading in that direction as far as China having a world reserve currency. But there's two things, and we've talked about this many times, that you really need in order to have the world reserve currency. And one of those things is you have to have a safe and liquid asset that is big enough to provide to the world, right? Like the US treasuries. I mean, that means that the country has to go into an incredible amount of debt in order to provide the world with that safe and liquid asset like the US treasuries. And then on top of that, you also have to provide the world with the actual dollars or the money to use for the world reserve currency. And in that case, then you have to go into a lot of deficit spending, meaning that or deficit trade, meaning that you're importing a hell of a lot more than you're exporting so that you can export those dollars to the world. That's something else that China, I don't think, is really keen on doing right now, especially considering that they just shut down their entire country and all the manufacturing, so there's even less stuff being exported out and trying to get those dollars to come in, or that yuan or whatever to come in. That's the problem with being the world reserve currency. I mean, is that to be able to provide the world with enough currency, and to have that safe and liquid asset U.S. Treasury to provide the world with that. Those are two things that are like, it's very it puts you in a very compromising position, because you basically get very big, and when the bigger you are, the bigger you know, the harder you fall. It puts you in that, but then it doesn't give a lot of other people the ability to compete against that unless they totally destroy you, right? So that's another thing. Like, that's why a lot of people probably feel that there's going to be like massive world wars and stuff like that taking place, because in order to knock the dollar out from being that world reserve currency, you basically have to take that country to war and destroy them. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, but you know, one way or the other, it might as well be that way, considering the effects that the people here in the United States will feel from the loss of their standard of living. Will feel like they had just gone to war. So anyway, did I get another super chat? I did. Thank you so much, Space Bun, for the $5. Dollar DXY keeps going up. We'll see other countries fall to inflation before U.S. long term. Love your content. Yeah, I agree. The dollar will destroy the world. I mean, it's going to get, I mean, we're just now starting to feel the taste of what quantitative tightening is like, coming from the Federal Reserve. Now, up until this point, they have been rolling that old debt over into new debt. So that anything that, like, all the dollars that were coming back to the Federal Reserve, they were basically rolling that into the economy, or rolling that back into treasuries again. They weren't pulling any liquidity out of the system. Now they're actually pulling those dollars out of the system. When those treasuries and those coupons get paid, they're going to pull, I forget how much it is. What was it, like $60 billion or something like that? They're going to pull that out of the market. They're not going to roll that into more treasuries or mortgage-backed securities. I mean, they might do some, but they're not going to do as much as they were. They're actually going to start pulling that stuff out. And when that starts to happen, I mean, because you think about it, think about all the pain that all the economies around the world are feeling, all the pain that these corporations are feeling from issuing out their debts in dollars, and now those dollars are starting to, or the threat of dollars disappearing has caused them to go into a crisis situation. Now they're actually going to start pulling the dollars out. Just think about what's going to be like in 6 months. It's going to be bad. All right. They have a Swift system that makes Swift look like DOS. Yeah, I get it. The BRICS nations are definitely on the road to having something that could definitely take over as a world reserve currency. Like, they are planning those things. They are putting all the gears in the right spots. Everything is like getting set up to do it. The only problem with it is that it is so small in its infancy that it's insignificant. Like, the yuan does like 3% of the world trade out there. Like, even if they were to triple the amount that they do as far as world trade in the currency of the yuan, it still wouldn't even be 10%. I mean, they could triple the amount of that they're doing right now, and still will not make 10%. That is, they are so far away from being a world reserve currency. It's like, it's not even a contender. Now, yeah, like, I mean, you should probably be concerned about it, but it's not happening tomorrow. So, like, to be prepared for it tomorrow is like, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of other things. Like, I mean, you should definitely keep an eye on it, be concerned about it. It's going to happen into the future, and you should be prepared for something like that. But, you know, the other thing that you would need is trust, right? And this is really what it comes down to, is like, everything in the entire world, no matter what it is, comes down to trust, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, you know, I trust this car is going to stop when I hit the brake pedal, right? I mean, I got to trust that thing. And the sad thing about trust is that most of the time, trust is an illusion. There is no real trust. It's just your perception of what it is that's going on out there. So you have to have some sort of trust level. Well, the United States, for some reason, has this trust, right? I mean, they got the world's trust. Not everybody trusts them, and everybody points their finger at them and says, hey, I don't like the things that you do. But at the end of the day, they all want the dollar. So they do have trust enough for the United States that they want their money, right? And they're willing to take a debt due in dollars. So they trust the United States enough. If you go around the world and you're like, hey, I want to do a deal, and trust me, this yuan is good money, I don't know. I mean, the level of trust there is not so high, right? So now you're like trying to do a deal with somebody, and instead of just trying to get them to trust you to do the deal, now you're trying to get them to trust you to do the deal inside of another trust of yuan. So you see how concerning that is? Like, you're going to like, trust me, we're doing this deal in dollars. Okay, well, now I have a little less concern about this now that, now I'm just trusting the deal. But when you got to trust the deal and you got to trust yuan, now it's a lot more concerning. And that's not going to be as advantageous as people are thinking it is. Yeah. All right, some more super chats. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Where's that one? Marcus, thank you very much for the $1.99. Bank of America just announced zero down mortgages. Yeah, I got a zero down mortgage on my first house. I put $500 into escrow and I got like $86 of that back. That's all it took for me to get into the first home that I had tried to purchase. And that's not a good deal, because when you don't put any money down on a house, then you have no equity in that house. And like me, I bought it in, what was it? Like April of 2007. And it was like almost immediately we went into the housing downturn, right? So like I couldn't even sell my house. Like I had almost immediately went underwater on my home. And I couldn't even sell it for what I owed on it. And years 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 of making payments on it still did not bring me above water on this home. And when I finally ran out of money and resources and everything else, I lost the house, right? So that was a real bummer situation. I would never suggest anybody buy a home with zero money down. I mean, it's, unless somehow you're able to get it for an incredibly good price and you immediately have equity in the home. And it's not so that you can have some great, money making opportunity by getting equity in the home right away. It's to protect yourself in case of a downturn. I mean, if you being in a position in which that you couldn't even sell the asset that you owed money on, I mean, that sucks. That really sucks. And so now I'm not so worried. I mean, because I had that damn foreclosure in my past, that when I bought this recent house, they made me put an insane amount of money down on the house. I mean, it was like an incredible amount. So now it's like the house can take a fairly good downturn as far as the price. I don't plan on selling it anyway, so it doesn't really matter what the house is worth. But it could have a fairly good downturn in price and still not go underwater, on at least not yet anyhow. Anyway, let's move on. What are we talking about here? 644 of you up in here. That is so awesome. Go hit that like button, please. There's only 224 likes, or 224 likes. If you guys hit that like button, it'll grab the video and spread it around and get more people up in here. Wow, that sucks, UE. Know that you were far from the only one in that situation, and it wasn't the result of your bad decisions. I'm going to take some blame for it, because if you don't learn from your mistakes, you'll never learn anything, right? So it was a bad timing in the economy, but also like I didn't deal with my own situation very well. I started drinking a lot and not making good decisions during that time. So it only exacerbated the problem, made it a lot worse. So I mean, yeah, it was a bad time for the economy. It was it was a bad time for a lot of people, because I know a lot of people were standing in the same position I was. But a lot of it also had to do with me and my behaviors at the time that did not help matters at all. So you learn from your mistakes and you move on, and that's why we're here, and eventually we'll be driving a new Camaro, right? And not a $500 car. I love my $500 car. It's fine. All right. Spend your money while there is still money around. Spot is $17. Let's see here. I'm so confident about the future. I got into motorcycles. Well, that's cool. I mean, that's a fun hobby to probably be in, would be motorcycles, especially dirt bikes. Well, actually, the spot price for gold and silver is determined by the COMEX, but you're never going to purchase silver and gold for spot. No, probably not. Hi from the UK. Pubs in the UK here reported energy bill per month has gone up £600 per month to 3,000. Wow. That's, I was kind of talking a little bit this morning um, about the energy over in Europe, and I thought about that for a little bit because, like, Russia cut off all this energy. And you think about it, like, okay, I think about it like a lot. I always go back to the lumber industry. So timber is a huge product for the United States, right? And believe me, I'll relate this back to energy. Timber is a big product of the United States, and we export a lot of trees. And we export those trees, generally they go to Asia, China, right? Where they mill them into furniture or whatever and send it back to us as some other kind of product. So the United States exports a lot of trees. Well, during the trade wars, right, when Trump was like screaming trade wars, um, China gave us the finger on logs. They were like, you know what, we don't want your logs. You're going to be all pain in the ass about, this trade wars and added tariffs and stuff like that. We don't want your logs. So they put a huge, like, tariff on logs. And so the log exports going to China had slowed down dramatically. Well, that made logs really cheap here in the United States. At the same time, lumber prices were running up. So this is why a lot of people were really mad about the whole idea as far as logs being, loggers not getting the same price as lumber prices were running up. But it's not so much about that kind of story that was taking place. It was the partnership that had happened because China started buying logs from Russia. Right? So then Russia became the #1 forestry exporter. Right, so they were exporting all these trees going to China that had filled in that spot that the United States and Canada had been doing. So I think a lot about that when it comes to the energy crisis, because you think about the energy crisis that has happened because Russia cut off Europe from a lot of this energy going into the nations over there, and then in turn the United States starts exporting a lot of energy going to Europe, like with the natural gas and stuff. Well, that's establishing a new partnership, right? Well, that partnership then has a profitability to it, right? Because, like, it's more expensive to get it over there. Europe starts paying a higher price for the added cost of trying to distribute it from the United States to Europe, right? So at some point, things will reverse, and Russia will start exporting energy again. And they will have the cheapest energy around because, well, for one, they're going to really need to export it because they're going to need some kind of funding. And they're going to be the cheapest place that has it, right? They've already had it established. They lost that partnership, and they're going to reestablish it. And the best way to do that is to offer the cheapest price. So everybody who had reestablished their partnerships, and with this new distribution coming from the United States into Europe, is now going to suffer the consequences from the malinvestments that went into that, as they've looked at all the projections of the higher prices that they'll pay and stuff. But then the new energy or the cheaper energy will start coming in, and then all those businesses will suffer. So that's kind of what I kind of predict coming from a lot of that energy crisis. Like, the immediate effects of it are going to be very damaging. People are going to get hurt by it. They're going to lose a lot of money. Businesses will shut down and stuff. But the long term, I think that's what's going to end up happening, is those reestablishing of the partnerships will cause investment to be established that is malinvestment. And then when the new energy comes in that Russia has reestablished again, since they turned it off, once they turn that back on, then all that malinvestment will come back and start hurting people. But that's my guess. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen. Silver is the bank killer. That is why they have to keep the price under control. Yeah, I mean, you guys know that I am a big fan of silver. UE, for example, if silver goes to $12, do you think coin shops or online dealers will sell under $20? Seems like spot goes down, but premiums don't come down as much. It has to do with fear. I mean, it has to do with because, like, you're right. I mean, if you could find anybody who is going to sell a $12 spot price coin for $12, it would be amazing, right? You find $12 spot price, and you're probably going to see, $10 premiums or something ridiculous like that. There is a huge difference. Like, I don't even look at spot price as like an indicator of where the metal price should be, because spot price also has paper prices mixed in with that, right? So there's a lot of paper silver out there that doesn't really show a realistic idea of how scarce and how much demand there is for silver. I mean, if you were to take away all the paper silver out there, there's hardly any silver out there to be had at all. And if the people who are invested in silver, including the paper silver, was to invest just into physical and no paper at all, the price of it would be through the moon. So there's no way of like really like understanding of where the price should be. To me, like, if you can pick up an ounce of silver under $30, that's a good deal, even if it is at $18 an ounce or $17 an ounce. That's a good deal, because to me, silver is incredibly undervalued at anything under $50 an ounce. Now, the problem with buying silver at $30 an ounce is one day you might want to sell it, and you don't want to sell it for anything less than $30 if that's what you paid for it. And if you pay $30 for it, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to sell it for $30, so you're going to be stuck with the silver. But that's if you look at it like a money-making kind of idea. Like, I'm going to buy this silver for this price, and I'm going to sell it in the future for a higher price. If that's why you bought silver, then that's an investment into silver, and or a speculation into silver. And that is going to be a very difficult way to go, because I have rarely ever had a time in my life in which that I could sell silver for a profit. And when I did, I was holding on to it thinking that it was like end times and I didn't want to give up all my valuable silver. So the one time that I really could have sold my silver off for a decent profit, I held on to it. So I lost out on my idea of like making money with silver. But when silver did really help me out was the day that my car broke down and I needed to get to work, and I didn't have any money, and I didn't have, like, I had horrible credit, and my credit card was maxed out, and I was just in a terrible position. And I called up my buddy who had a Tahoe, and I said, "Hey bro, are you still selling that Tahoe?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you still take silver and trade?" And he said, "Oh, you know it." And I said, "Will you drive it up here?" And he says, "Yep, be up there in a few minutes." And he brought that Tahoe up and the title, and I handed him 165 ounces of silver, and he signed that title over to me. And I thought, man, that is cool as hell, man. What an insurance policy. So from that point on, silver became my insurance policy. I don't care what it's worth. It doesn't matter what it's worth. It just matters how many ounces you have. And so you need a dollar cost average into silver. Don't stress about what the price is. Just buy 1 or 2 ounces. Forget about how much you paid for it. Don't worry about it. Just keep stacking it and stack up as much as you can. And if you never need it, that's awesome, man. You made it through life and you didn't need your silver. You get to hand it off to a family member or to somebody out there who you know is worthy, or just donate it to a charity or something. But look at it as an insurance policy, and you're going to be much happier with it. I know I am. I mean, I don't even look at what the spot price is on silver. Like, I might check it once a week, maybe, if that. I might look at it to see what it might be like in correlation to the dollar or to like something else. But I don't look at it to say, is now my buying opportunity or something like that, because my buying opportunity is every single minute of every single day if I have the $20 or $25 to go down to the coin shop and pick it up. So use silver as that. I mean, I'm not trying to give you advice on financial advice or investment advice or anything else like that, but take it from somebody who has been in the silver game for a very long time. Dollar cost averaging is by far the best way to buy silver, and then looking at it as an insurance policy and not as a speculation, that helps me sleep at night. So, I mean, you guys do what you want, but that's how I did it. we want a convention. UE live speaking tour. Yeah, hey, right on. All-nighters here. Cool. Um, calling 8 on the die. Yeah, I've been really thinking hard about this because I need to start doing something with the channel here. I've kind of gone a little stagnant with it. I got a few things. I've been trying to spend a little bit more time with the family and doing that, and then we're also a little short-handed at work now too. So I've been kind of focused in a little bit more on things that are going on with my day job. Excuse me. I've been kind of focusing in on that kind of stuff, but I would really like to get a book written. I'm not sure how to get that thing started or going. I need to read books is probably the best way to go about it, but I would like to get a book written. That way the speaking tour or doing speaking engagements would have a little bit more behind it. Like, I could be trying to sell the book because, it would be fun just to do the speaking engagements. Don't get me wrong. I would love to do something like that, but I think it would be better to have something to sell, like a program or a book. And since I really don't have a program I could sell, I don't know what kind of program I would sell you guys, but I think a book would be a fun thing to do. Yeah. All right. I'll be a groupie if you're going on tour. Well, all-nighter, I would definitely have you as my groupie for sure. Let's see here. How much did you pay for that cup of coffee? This cup of coffee was super cheap because I buy from the gas station over here, and it's not my favorite, but it's convenient. And since I was buying this here water, so I'd have something to drink while I was doing the show, I picked up the coffee too, so I would have some caffeine in me and I would babble on. So that was my plan. I will transfer my Bitcoin over a wood-burning stove. Okay. Talk to George. Yeah, I would. You guys catch that interview I did with Keta from Madison's Lumber? That was excellent. And it was pretty interesting because in that interview, the second part, we were talking about the cross-laminated timber industry, and she got real excited about that. And what was really interesting is that I had a gentleman from one of the mills up in British Columbia. He had contacted me. I talked to him yesterday on the phone, and he was like, dude, I am so glad you brought up the cross-laminated timber industry story. This is going to be huge. It's going to be the next big thing inside of the building industry. I would love to do an interview with you and talk to you in more detail about that industry. And so I think it's either the 3rd or 4th week of September, I should have a conversation with him. So that should be a great interview, and I can't wait to do that and post it for you guys. I really do think that cross-laminated timber industry is going to be the next big change and movement when it comes to the new building industries, especially when it comes to apartment complexes or commercial facilities, high rises, stuff like that. They're all going to be made out of solid wood components from the beginning to end. And although I'm not like a big believer in this whole idea about the green movement or whatever, I'm neither here nor there on that subject. I don't even research it. But this thing is being sold as that. So if there is this big push and this big green movement push, I have a feeling that this particular industry is going to be in the thick of that. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. I encourage you guys to watch that. Do you think it's really possible to become wealthy by what is that? Dancing into the stock market? Oh, dollar cost averaging. Okay, I'm sorry. Dollar cost averaging into the stock market during a recession without having a huge amount of money. Okay, no. Hold on. I'm not an investment advisor or anything like that, so I don't really give investment advice. I do buy into the stock market. You got to buy particular stocks. Now, the stocks that I am buying, right, because I just want to be real transparent with you guys and what it is that I'm doing, and I've said this a bunch of times. I buy Altria, ticker symbol Mo, right? It's cigarettes and beer. So I'm not a smoker or a drinker, but I do know a little bit about addiction. So that's the reason why I've gotten into that particular stock. Now, if I was to give any advice out there as far as investing into the stock market, I think about the statement that Alan Greenspan said when somebody asked him about the inversion of the 2-year 10-year. They asked him what his thoughts about the recession indicator of the 2-year 10-year inversion. That's the 2-year treasury and the 10-year treasury, when the yields on the 2-year treasury rises higher than the 10-year. That's the inverted yield curve. And he said, although that's a very good indicator of a recession, what he likes to look at is the 5-year, 30-year. And he said that when you see the spread between the 5-year and 30-year grow, that is corporate management's willingness to invest. Now, if I think about it the opposite, like if you see that spread shrinking or even invert, that would be corporate management's unwillingness to invest, which means to me that the stock market wouldn't want to be the place you would want to be. So when I see that 5-year, 30-year spread start to grow and grow significantly, that tells me from what Alan Greenspan was saying that the corporate management's willingness to invest is really starting to take place. And if they're willing to invest, well, I guess so am I, right? Because I'm not the smartest one in the world. I'm just trying to figure out how this stuff goes. And if Alan Greenspan says that's a good indicator for where the stock market's going to go, and I was able to call out the recession or the inverted yield curve with that 5-year, 30-year, because that inverted before the 2-year, 10-year did, and here we are talking about recession. So I think that's going to be my indicator of when I'm going to go back into the stock market, or at least start moving money towards that direction. Now, I've said it for a while. I've been positioning into cash, getting into, well, for one, I spent all my money trying to get into the house, so I didn't really have any money left. But the money that I have been trying to save and get, I've been saving, like straight up saving it, and not putting that towards Bitcoin or gold or silver or stocks or anything else. Like I said, a little bit of dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and into stocks, but it's a very small amount, like maybe $50 a week or $50 a month. Like that would be the most, if anything. So, but when I see that 5-year, 30-year spread start to happen, then I'm going to start moving much more into the stock market and not hold on to cash. But when that happens, we'll talk about it. All right. Let's see here. You guys are all chatting with each other. All right. I haven't listened to Lynn Alden, but haven't heard from her for a while. Our division of transient bus MFR will cease operations next Friday, September 9th. I've been out of work for 2 weeks and counting. Jeez, bummer. Greetings from Nigeria. Right on. That's a little ways away. How does the lumber industry looking? Do you think we have hit the peak? Hit the peak in which way? Like, hit the peak going up or down? Right now, the lumber industry, the prices are down. Like, in as far as the futures and cash price from the mills, that price is down. I mean, we're down at like 500 per thousand, high 400s. Anything under 500 per thousand right now, and the mills aren't really gonna be profitable at that position. The input costs going in now, log cost, fuel cost, employment cost, everything is just too expensive for them to operate at 500 per thousand. Now, there are some mills out there that can operate at 500 per thousand, but a lot of them, like the high cost, high producers, like up in the British Columbia area, they're not. And they're going to start curtailing development when that happens. And this is something that we had actually talked about a while ago. And in fact, I believe Keta was talking about some of the mill curtailments that have been taking place. Something interesting that I found is that now here we are at this 500 per thousand, knowing that the mills don't want to operate at this low of a cost, that it would only be a matter of time before you would see some sort of shortage or unavailable lumber out there. I hadn't seen it yet until this week, right? This last week. And for the first time since the pandemic, I wasn't able to get 2x6 decking, like the standard treated decking material, like, you know, your just regular pressure treated decking without the little incisor marks, just your standard treated decking. My supplier says, I'm sorry, I'll send you the 8-footers, but I am out of stock on everything else that's longer. All the 10 footers, 12 footers, 20 footers, all that stuff, I'm out of stock on. I don't have it. So that's the first, like I said, that's the first time that I've experienced that since the pandemic. So give it a little bit of time here, and you're going to find that the lumber availability is going to dissipate. You're going to find that it's not going to be a whole lot out there to buy, even though the prices are down. When that takes place, the prices are going to shoot back up. Now, again, once the prices shoot back up, the mills will run back into production again, and you're going to find that the prices, the inventory levels will build and the prices will come back down. But this is the oversupply, undersupply, oversupply, undersupply thing that we've been talking about. It's the bullwhip effect that is finally going to find its equilibrium. It just keeps going until finally it finds its spot. I think, honestly, and Keta, when we talked, I've been saying it for a while, and Keta agreed with me. Well, I mean, I agree with Keta, I guess I should say, because she said we didn't discuss it ahead of time, but she believes that the average lumber futures price, cash price, will be somewhere between 500 and 800 per thousand. Anything over 800 per thousand, people get frustrated and stop buying lumber. Anything under 500 per thousand on the lumber futures, and the mills get frustrated and they stop producing. So it's going to be somewhere in between that. If you can pick up your lumber right now, like if you were in need of lumber, I wouldn't hesitate. Like I would start buying it now, because the availability of it is probably going to start becoming less available, even though we're going into winter, which you would think like completely opposite of. As you go into winter, you think they would be more available as less homes are being built during the winter time, but that's not the case right now. I mean, we're running, like I said, my supplier of pressure treated, he ran out. So I mean, there's a shortage happening again, but it's not going to last forever. It's going to be short-lived. Was that enough lumber talk? All right. Hey, there's Lord Humongous. See, now we got our moderator in there. All right. Let's see here. I went to Silver Symposium in Spokane last week. The true gold is the contacts, network, net worth. Yeah, absolutely. Your network is everything. I mean, if you can call somebody to help you out and you have the best guy on the job, I mean, having that network is everything. I mean, I can't stress it enough. That's one of the reasons why I really wanted to stay in Astoria and didn't want to leave, is because this is where my network is. This is where I know everybody. I mean, if I need something, I put the word out there and it starts traveling around town. It isn't before too long that, I have it. And of course, it didn't work so well for me when I was looking for a place to rent. All right. Let's see here. Every market crash in history happened in October. Is something coming? Everybody is crushing. Keep up the great work. Yeah, both were absolutely great shows, Wayne. They knew the new and the old. What was that? Sorry, I was trying to find another question here, but you guys are all just chatting with each other. One day we will see Simon final full orange piling moment, and it's going to be great. Huh, I don't get it. Something is coming has nothing to do with October. What do you think of the World Economic Forum and why no one talks about them? I don't know. It seems like everybody's talking about them. I mean, I don't give them that much credit, to be honest with you. I mean, I know they have a lot of influence and they change the way that everybody and change societies and stuff like that. But I don't conduct or change my lives around what these people are doing or saying or threatening to do. I live my life according to what I feel is going to be best for me, or I try to anyway. So I don't know, when I hear like how you're going to eat the bug and stuff like that, I mean, I just giggle about that kind of stuff, and it was just like, you might be sitting around eating bugs, but if I eat bugs, I'm going to make sure that it's for fun. Right? Like I don't eat bugs, but if somebody has some chocolate covered crickets or something like that, I might try one out to see what it's like. But I'm not going to be like one who's going to sit around thinking, oh man, you're going to have to sit around eating cricket casserole or some shit like that. That's not in my belief. Like I don't think that way at all. Yeah. Tequila worm, yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's a bug you could eat. What's your take on the ESG scores role in current economy? You mean like your environment, like how well you behave in society with the environment and your carbon footprint and your behavior and everything else like that? I don't know. Like I'm I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, a lot of people like look at that kind of thing and think about like I don't know, the power aspect of it that comes down on them or something. I guess it's like another one of those things. Like it seems like something that they can have power over you or the way that things are conducted. And I guess I don't fall into that kind of thing. I guess there's a lot of threatening things that can come from it. But again, like I just don't raise my concern level up with it. All right. A market crash would probably be a good for first-time home buyers too. They only have power if you believe they do. That's right. They only have power if you believe they do. Using the double language of legalese, we already own nothing, just not happy. Yeah, right? Simon, is this your best summer ever? It is for me. Um, I wouldn't necessarily go in to say that it was my best summer ever. I mean, I had some summers where I got to travel, and those were some pretty good summers. But I would definitely say this wasn't a bad summer. It was definitely a good one. So I wouldn't worry about negative rates in the U.S. anytime soon. No, I wouldn't either. I think they are going to probably stay elevated for quite some time. Uh, Thank you. I would just all use old Nokia phones and they'll be worried. Pay off car or hold cash. If you have a really low interest rate on your car, then I would say hold the cash, right? But if your interest rate on your car is high, then there's no better return on your money than to pay off debt, right? Pay off debt and not pay interest on it because you're going to end up paying interest on that money. If you're holding cash, you're going to lose the purchasing power because of the interest rates that you're paying on the loan. Now, if the loan is really low, then you could make instead of making the payment, you could invest that money, but it has to be into an investment that's going to pay above the interest rate that you're paying on the loan. So unless it's like a really low loan, 2 or 3% on your car loan, then it doesn't make sense to continue to pay it, right? But if it has a really low loan or interest rate on that loan, then you might as well just hold on to the loan and invest that money. So that's the only thing. But right now I would be getting into as much cash as you can because I think buying opportunities are coming. I think there's going to be some killer buying opportunities coming, especially in about 6 months. Because you think about it, the Federal Reserve really just started raising interest rates, and they're only now starting to tighten up the quantity or do the quantitative tightening. So if it takes 6 months to a year before the effects of what the Federal Reserve is doing to the Fed funds rate actually impacts the economy, we are just now starting to feel the effects of what the Federal Reserve has done. And it probably won't be into full effect for another 6 months. Well, you think about it, they're doing all kinds of stuff right now that in 6 months from now is going to have a hell of a lot of more impact on the economy. Again, the things that they are doing today have an impact on the markets today, but the impact on the economy takes much longer, and it's going to be down the road a ways before that happens. All right. I love off season. I live here. A beach and the room are like 1/5 of what they cost spring break. All right. Gold chains, bar light, hello. All right, invest in yourself and save for rainy days. Grandparents and throw nothing out of value. I did most of my vacationing during the lockdown, July 2020, because the Airbnb was so cheap because everyone was at home. Yeah, I agree. We did an Airbnb like around Thanksgiving or something like that during that time, and I couldn't believe how cheap it was. It was like way cheap, like $150 or some stupid thing to rent this big old house. All right, gold is holding a hard support level. Holding cash for sure. Any thoughts on forced re-indexing low rate loans to inflation? I'd have to think about that one to give you any kind of real input. All right, like ammo, never enough. Lord Humongous loves the metal. All right, what's the housing market like in Clatsop County? It's very expensive here. It's very expensive, and although there's a lot more homes coming onto the market, the ones that are coming onto the market are, in my opinion, way overpriced. There are some reductions taking place, but again, like they're not reducing down to even the levels that they were 6 months ago. They're reducing down like, a little bit. They seem like a significant number, but it's really not. Like for example, like watched this one house. It went from like 650 up to like, I don't know. I think they had it at 785, and then they dropped it $30,000. So it was like at the high sixes, then it went up to almost 800,000. They dropped it $30,000, and now it's sitting at 750. I mean, it's just like, the numbers is still, although they're dropping, they're still just ridiculously high. And I don't know, like, I mean, there was a lot of turnover, like they were turning over fairly quickly, but now I'm starting to see, like I saw a few houses sitting on the market. One of them that I know of has been on for well over a year, but I think that one has foundation issues now, and so they're having trouble getting loans for it. But anyway, yeah, it still seems to be doing pretty well. A lot more inventory on the housing market here too in Clatsop County. Astoria is picturesque, beautiful. It is. That's one of the reasons why I love being here. Silver is easier to stack, save, and buy. Let's see here. Escorts were asking for $100 an hour, and now they're asking for $500 an hour. Is that a supply and demand issue? Is there more demand or less supply maybe happening there? I will have to tow it to park it in Simon's driveway. What are you talking about? All right. How about some Bitcoin? Yeah. My wife and I were in Astoria yesterday, out from Portland. I know Portland, but was born and raised 53 years ago here. Hard the things we are all seeing these days. Oh, yeah, so did you let's see here. Do you think your home market is volatile? Montana is stable no matter what. No very many highs or lows. Yeah, I would say it's pretty volatile, but I don't really like, I haven't seen much of a downturn like in the opposite direction yet, except for the housing market crash, right? The great financial crisis. So, I keep seeing it moving up dramatically. So in that sense, I would say it's it's volatile. But as far as like the downward, I haven't seen a dramatic move down yet. I do suspect that's going to happen, but just haven't seen it yet. Canned beans for escorts. Do they take canned beans? Alright. UE, when will we see labor prices come down in the trades, if ever? Oh, you're going to see them coming down. I mean, it's going to happen. Give it a little bit of time here. You're going to start seeing the corporations start to fail. When you start seeing more layoffs start to take place, then people are going to start taking into those service jobs, and they're going to start moving into the trades as well. I mean, it's just a matter of time. That's For every, like, you got to think, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. If all of a sudden, like, a plumber goes from making $75 an hour to $120 an hour, and people realize that plumbers are making $120 an hour, well, then they're going to go learn to be a plumber, because making $120 an hour is a lot better than making $15 an hour. So once that happens, then all of a sudden you have a flood of plumbers coming into the market, and then the trade starts to come down. It just takes time for that transition to happen. And so, yeah, I do see where labor market's going to come down. Abo. Let's see here. Thank you for the $10 or 10. What is that? Euros? What do you think about FIRE? Financial independent, retire early. My plan is to save until 50, move to Thailand, Mexico, etc. Retire or work part-time there, then move back with 65 for pension. I love the idea of FIRE, the financial independence, retire early. I love this idea of doing that. However, most people can't figure that thing out early enough to actually retire early, if ever. I'm now in a position, because I couldn't, geez, guys, like, I'm 46 years old now, and just barely got my stuff together to the point that I could even, consider buying a house or even having anything. So, I have I have nothing for retirement. I am nowhere even remotely close to it. But I'm in a position in which that I can do something about it now. If you are in a position early enough in life that you can actually do something to retire early, I mean, that's awesome, because most people can't ever figure it out. And to be able to actually do it I mean, in my opinion, it would just be absolutely amazing. So if you are young, like if you're a teenager or you're in your early 20s, and you have the opportunity to do a decent income, because it's not necessary, and it doesn't even really matter about your income. If you can get a decent income, that's awesome. But if you could save, because that's really what it comes down to. It doesn't matter how much you can earn if you can't save anything. It really comes down to how much you can save. And so if you can save a lot of money when you're young, that's really what you have going for you, because time is by far the best thing that a young person has, because you got the power of compounding interest. And if you can compound interest your investment, that's it's like the easiest way to go about it. It's almost like a no-brainer. I mean, I was showing a young guy, he worked at the store here with me. He's probably like 25, 26 years old. And I showed him, I was like, dude, look, if you take this compounding interest calculator, look what you could do with not even any money down, $50 to start with, and $50 a month for the rest of your life. If you were to gain a 10% interest, if you could find it out there, this is how much money you would make. And it blew him away. He was like, whoa, his eyes got huge. And I said, look, man, $50 a month, just put it in there, and you could be a dumb shit for your entire life and still end up okay. So the only thing that he had going for him, though, was the fact that he was young, right? And I said, so it's not a matter of how much, it's how often you put in when you're young. And it's better to get started early. And I showed him how much $50, just waiting 1 month to get started, how much it was going to cost him. And so that's my advice. If you can retire early, it's because you have done something in your younger days that gave you that nice shot into being able to put yourself in that position. And by doing that, it's by saving, if you can save early in life. All right. Hey, thank you very much. Hey, boy sent me, or a Bo, is that am I saying that right? From 50 to 65, you would have to use up most of your savings and insure yourself before returning with 65 to collect at 50-60% of your regular pension. James, thank you so much for the $5. No comment with it. All right. You guys still talking about escorts? All right. That was Mark Faber, that Dr. Doom or Mr. Doom or whatever they call him. he said that, that you could stimulate the economy with prostitutes and beer, and that he was doing his part. Yeah. So I thought that was funny. UE, don't know if you addressed this yet, but what do you think of the student loan forgiveness? What is the side effects? Um, to be honest with you, I have a hard time believing that this is going to go through in the way that people are thinking that it is. But let's say it is. It's going to come at the taxpayer's expense. That is going to be very damaging going into the future for the taxpayers out there, is that they have to pay even more interest on a student loan debt. Okay, so here's a student loan debt that's collecting interest, and it's going to get paid off with taxpayer money that's going to end up costing the taxpayers even more because they're paying it off with interest-paying debt. Okay. Is it going to be damaging to the economy? Probably not so much, even impactful to the economy in any way. Like, how is it that this is going to put more purchasing power into the student's pocket, considering that they're not making their payments anyway? So it's not going to give them any more money, right? It's just going to relieve like this sense of burden that they have on them, because a lot of these students aren't making the payments. Okay, so it's not going to really do anything for the economy as far as stimulating the economy with more purchasing power, because they don't have the money to make the payment. They're not going to have the money anyway. So there's that part of it. So we got the taxpayers' burden, we got the people's burden just mentally being relieved because they're not actually making the payment on it. But then it also has another burden on them, because actually paying that debt off, or at least being under the pressure of paying that debt off, puts you in a different kind of mindset when it comes to how you handle your finances. Now, if you have this burden, oh God, I got this burden, well, then you may not want to go out and buy a car or spend that money that you have, because you got this burden on you that you have to pay. So if you do take that burden away, right, well, then it gives you this relief. Well, maybe I will go out and buy the car. So it can, I guess, stimulate the economy in that sense if you take away this particular burden, But then what that also does is it creates a damaging effect of, I will always be bailed out, right? So I had this $10,000 or whatever just immediately just vanish from my burden, right? I don't have to pay this thing anymore. Well, woohoo! Give me a credit card. Let's go and rack up some more debt, since I don't really have to know what the consequences of having debt is, since it just like disappeared. And I didn't have to work real hard to pay it off, so therefore I really don't know how bad it is to go into debt. And I might just not be responsible and go back into debt again with, credit cards or something else, because I had this credit loan or the student loan just, disappear from existence. I don't have to worry about debts anymore. So that's the other damaging thing that could really come from it, is that it creates this mental idea that you'll always be bailed out, and that you don't have any consequences from taking on things like student loan debt or credit card debts or some other kind of debt. So anyway, those are kind of my ideas on it. I still have a hard time believing that it's going to end up being as awesome for people as they think it is. I think it's going to come with a consequence. All right. Are you parked behind an ambulance? Yeah, I am actually. They pulled up. They park in different areas because they're kind of located over on the far end of town. So right now it's like a busy weekend, and there's a lot of traffic. And so what they'll do is they'll park here. Sometimes they park in another area too, just so they can be like kind of closer to, say, like where there might be an incident, so they're not on the far end of town. So they just park right over there. Anyway, not a big deal. And then also it's a big parking lot, so that's why the buses park over here too. Lord Humongous, platinum is a hard way to invest or trade metals. Yeah, I have a little bit of platinum, but I kind of agree. Like the network that you can build to sell silver can be huge, but selling platinum may not be so easy. And I've used the example of like you just stroll into some strange town, right? You're in the middle of nowhere. You can go into different bars and show them a silver eagle to all the different people who are sitting there hanging out at the bar, and most likely you're going to find somebody who recognizes it and would be willing to buy it from you. You might have to hit a couple of different bars, but it probably wouldn't take too long before you would find somebody who would buy it off you. Platinum, on the other hand, may not be so easy. And if you're trying to sell like a whole 1 ounce platinum, you're probably not going to find a whole lot of buyers sitting at the bar. But trying to sell like say a 20 ounce or not 20 ounce, but a $20 or $25 silver eagle, your chances are a lot higher. So liquidating silver, in my opinion, is probably way easier than just about anything else out there when it comes to metals. The capitalist fundamental mistake about economy is that the money going to the people is seen as an expense or even loss, even when that is the money which enables the economy in the first place. Um, was it the money that enables the economy, or was it the debt that people were allowed to take that enables the economy? Because really money is nothing more than a facilitator of trade, right? I mean, that's all it should do, is facilitate a trade. But money has gone much more than that, right? Money had been used as a store of value. Money's been used in many ways, right? And now money is not what it once was. Like money used to be gold. So storing it, using money as a store of value once could take place. But now you can't really use it as a store of value. I mean, you can do it as a short term, like I suggest, so that you could take advantage of downturns in the market. But it's not really a good use of like, it's not really good for like long term. But all money in existence is debt, right? It's all based off of debt. There is no like actual hard currency out there. If you took all the debt away, like everybody paid off all their debts, there was no student debts, there was no credit card debts, there was no government debts, there was no debts, the dollar would cease to exist. There would be no money. There would still be debt to pay, but there wouldn't be any money in circulation. So what is it that's really that we need? I mean, do we need money? Do we need the government to produce money? Or could we use something like Bitcoin? Because ultimately, the only thing we really need is something to facilitate the trade. Something that can trade our time for goods and services out there, whatever it is. And we need something that can store value, but we don't need those two things to be the exact same thing. So, yeah, anyway, I'm babbling. Wow, there's so many of you up in here. 717 of you. That is so awesome. Hey, Osama, thank you so much for the $2. UE, how many years you work construction specialty? Let's see here. I did construction framing was the most of what I did in construction for probably, I would say like 5 years, 5 good solid years of doing that. And that was a lot of fun. So like what I did was framing, siding, roofing, that kind of thing. And then I did a little bit of finish work, on some of the houses that we had built. But for the most part, I did a lot of framing. That was like kind of my big thing. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. Because the nice thing about framing is like, like the concrete guys are pretty. That's a pretty cool like job to have, because you got the foundation. Everything starts once the foundation goes in. But really, like, there is nothing that happens. Like, there is no building to do anything else. Like the electricians, the plumbers, anything else. There's nothing else that can happen until the framers do their thing, right? They're the ones who put the house together. And so like when you're framing a house, it's really like the bulk of the job. It's when the excitement happens, when you get to see the whole thing come together, you get to see the shape of it happen, and then all the little pieces start to go onto it. So I really enjoyed framing, like especially when I was working with a really good crew and we could do a lot of production in a day. That was a lot of fun, get to put buildings together. Thank you so much, Cabragon for the $4.99. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I apologize. Thoughts on minimalism and integrating into financial thinking. Um, you know, I agree a lot with the minimalist thought. To have very little personal possessions. Uh, that's kind of me in general. Like, I don't really have a whole lot of personal possessions. And, a lot of it was due to, like, ended up letting a lot of stuff go to try and, selling it off for money or whatever. But the idea of having very little personal possessions and enjoying your life, enjoying the experiences that you have going through life. So, one, if you could be financially independent and have very little personal possessions or, say, like, ties to anything, to me that would be like the ultimate of life. Like, you can just cruise through life whatever you want with all the financial things that normally burden people are not a burden to you. You just get to enjoy your money and just get to enjoy life. Now, granted, that doesn't leave you with like a place to call your own, like, a big, like, giant house with lots of property or something like that, which could be pretty appealing for a lot of people as well. But from the minimalist kind of thought, I like the idea of not having any possessions or having very few possessions and just enjoying life, just cruising around and, say, going on like permanent vacation or just, say, living the van life or something like that. I mean, that seems very appealing to me, and it leaves very little impact. It leaves very little requirement. Um, so I don't know. I kind of see it from both sides, but because I do like the minimalist thought. But then again, I also like the idea of having like a nice house to come to and having family around and being able to, live comfortably like that as well. So I don't know. Both ways, really. How does one become a YouTube commenter? Were you a Mormon? Uh, Scientologist? Military brat? Um, that's interesting that you brought up the other ones. I did grow up in the military, but are you asking like how does one like get to this kind of level on YouTube? It's by accident, right? I mean, that's how it happened to me. Yeah, I didn't ever think I was going to end up being here on YouTube doing this sort of thing. I mean, it's amazing. I can't believe it's here, and I thank you guys every day for being here, especially considering there's 700 of you watching right now. But getting on YouTube, I'm going to give you some advice because I've seen a few YouTube channels take off since with my advice to them. The number one thing is you have to find your niche. You have to find what it is that you are going to be involved with. Like, if you are going to have a fishing channel, make sure you're talking about fishing, or at least something that is remotely close to dealing with fish. Okay? Don't like have a fishing channel and then talk about sports cars. Okay? Like, stay consistent to talking about fishing. Like, if you want to talk about sports cars, start a different channel and talk about sports cars. Whatever it is that your channel is going to be geared towards, stay consistent to that niche, whatever it is that you're going to be talking about or involved with. And then consistent. Stay consistent. And not just within the topic that your channel is going to be about, but the posting of your videos, like how often you post videos. It doesn't have to be every single day like I try to do, but you're going to want to do them like twice a week, once a week. I mean, as very consistent as you can, because that's going to bring people back to your channel. They're going to know that you're posting videos, and if you do good videos that they want to watch, then they're going to come back. And if they know that you're posting once a week, like consistently on Friday, then they're going to come back every Friday to come and watch your channel. And then don't be discouraged, right? Because you're going to post videos for a long time that nobody's going to watch. That's going to be very discouraging, but take it as like your own personal journal or something like that. Take that kind of attitude towards it, that you're going to post videos regardless of how many people are watching. It doesn't matter if you do it that way. And so if you get that going, finding places to post your videos, like Facebook forums, stuff like that. There's a lot of Facebook groups that you can post videos to. Finding places to go to with them and see where it goes. I know of quite a few channels now that are getting quite a few views per video, and they really have very average kind of content to them, but they're just following some of these kind of tips and their channels are growing. So, if you really want to have a YouTube channel, try out some of that stuff and let me know how it goes for you. It takes a while. For me, anyway, it was like, there was some things that had taken place. Like I had posted quite a few videos that nobody had watched, and then I had done one that had talked about the housing market that got quite a bit of attention. Once I started getting a little bit of attention towards that video, I knew what it was that the audience was looking for, and I listened to what the audience was saying. Like I read the comments, and they were like, hey, we don't like this, we do like this. And so I tried to stay consistent to what the viewers were asking for as well. So anyway, have fun with that. Start your channel when your topic is in the news. His brother were both military men. Yes, they were, and so was my sister. My sister was a Marine. Tobacco in the Pacific Northwest. It's got to be way hotter and more humid. I don't know. I haven't heard of a whole lot of people growing tobacco up here. How this place is out when all the debt is call in the same time. Okay. I don't know if all the debt would get called in at the same time. I guess it could. Simon, when you are rich and famous, you will remember us little guys. Well, yeah, I will, because I don't know if I could ever actually be rich and famous. Like, I actually have a hard time trying to get out of the mindset that I am just not a broke ass. Like, that I am just not a complete broke loser. Like, I have lived that life for so long that it's difficult. Like, the idea of driving around a new vehicle to me almost gives me the idea of being, like, the feeling of being embarrassed. Like, I don't want to drive a new vehicle because of how much it cost and how much money that I would have spent on it. Thinking, man, I spent that much money on a car. What are you, crazy? I mean, why would you do that? That's the kind of thing that runs through my head. And it's funny because even though, like, like the idea of a payment wouldn't like be that burdensome. Like, I mean, it would be a bummer because the payments are expensive, but it wouldn't like take away from my family or anything like that. It would be a lot, but I could do it. I can't bring myself to do it. Like, I just like, man, that is just so much. Like, I just feel like heartbreaking from it. So to me, like, I don't know if I could ever be like rich. Like, I mean, I might someday have some money and I might, have like, a decent amount of it or whatever. But in my mind, I will always be broke. Like, I will always be broke. Like, I don't think I'll ever get out of that mindset. And, it's funny. I do have to laugh at it because even like yesterday, like, going to a festival yesterday, we go to get some food, and I told myself, no, just get the ceviche too, because you want it, right? It was like before I wouldn't have ordered like a side of something because it was just like, man, this is too much money or whatever. It's just like, no, get the stuff, man. You want the food, get the food, and so I actually like have to tell myself to do these sort of things, and I guess it's getting a little better, but anyhow. You got that right, Lord humongous. Let's see here. Paper is poverty. It is the ghost of money and not money itself. Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. Yep. Those who own the system own you. The system is collapsing. You still need the paper money. My company is moving out of China. Very secretive, but the CCP lockdowns, etc., are making it more costly staying versus leaving China. Huh, that's interesting to think about. I'm gonna roll that one around for a little bit to think about the cause and effects from something like that, because that is taking place. You think about it, like the manufacturing, it almost, like, to me, it almost seems like the United States and China are really trying to reverse the Cantillon effect, where new money coming into the system is damaging, right? We noticed it here in the United States. We noticed it. It's happening here in the United States. We used to be the biggest manufacturer in the entire world. We manufactured and distributed more stuff out of the country than we imported. And we lent more money out there than any other nation. So now we're the biggest deficit country. Like, we import more than any other country out there, and we borrow more than any other country, right? And this was due to the Cantillon effect, right? As we were manufacturing and exporting more stuff, that was new money coming into the system. As that new money came into the system, we started enjoying that with the cost of living increase, or by increasing our standard of living. When we did that, we were diving into luxuries. As we dove into luxuries, we started increasing the amount of imports to compete with our domestic manufacturing that was happening here. As the domestic manufacturing costs increased and the foreign imports got cheaper, we just kept importing more and more and more until we eventually got to a point where we had more imports than we did exports. That was all because of the massive amounts of manufacturing and exporting we did back in the earlier part of the century, going into the mid part of the century. China is experiencing something very similar. As they were manufacturing powerhouse and they're importing more and more money as they export those goods, they're going to start feeling the effects of that Cantillon, right? The Cantillon effect. As their people are going to start enjoying more luxuries, and they start competing with by importing more stuff as well. But if you can fight that, to reverse that Cantillon effect, if you can slow down the manufacturing within your country to keep that stuff from exporting and that new money coming in, right? The problem that the United States experienced from the mid part of the century with their manufacturing, right? So if you can slow that down in China, lock the manufacturing down, don't export as much stuff, and then at the same time, increase the manufacturing here in the United States, right? We're going to start investing into chip manufacturing and bring home a bunch of manufacturing because the distribution network broke down so bad. It's like an attempt to reverse the Cantillon effect, that new money coming into the system due to the new manufacturing. I don't know. But anyway, it's something that I kind of thought was happening. If all that made sense, I don't know. Let's see here. You also have to learn what the algorithms, like posting consistently is a big deal. See a lot of channels flame out. They just start randomly posting. No consistency. People lose interest. Yeah, and that's exactly right. Because, you know, what's funny out there is that no matter what you post a video about, right? You might find that you post like somebody might post a video of something that you think is just completely like off the charts. Like, why would anybody watch this, right? But then again, somebody might be saying that about this video or some other video that you might like. Because you don't like the video, or because that it's not a popular video in what you think would be a popular video, doesn't mean that other people out there wouldn't watch it. And there's 6 billion people, 6.5 billion people or something that have access to YouTube. So the chances of you finding other people out there who would want to watch your video are pretty high. But finding them is difficult. YouTube will try to do that for you. So if you are consistently putting out videos, right, and then getting some viewers, YouTube will recognize those viewers and say, okay, well, this is the type of viewer who is watching your videos. I, being YouTube, will pick up your video with the YouTube algorithm and start to try to find some more people who are like the ones who are watching your video. So they're going to go out there and try and find those people for you. They're going to try and find your audience. Believe me, YouTube wants your videos to be watched. They want like advertising revenue, right? So they want people watching your videos. And if you have videos that people want to watch, they're going to want to find those people to watch your videos. So you have to help YouTube out by staying consistent with your videos and, you know, using hashtags that relate a lot to your videos and what that, you know, that means. Once your videos get picked up and get spread around, then it's a lot easier for YouTube to understand what kind of audience you're, you know, that's looking for your type of videos. Hey, right on. Hey, thank you very much, Matthew, for the $20. Very cool of you. The Lumberjack Landlord. Be sure and check out the Lumberjack Landlord. He has an awesome YouTube channel talking all things real estate. Give this man super chat. Wealth is important if you see it properly. To be most prepared you can be. If the collapse coming is like a bear. I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun you. Appreciate all you do. Thank you so much, Matthew, man. That is very cool. And yeah, I think about that a lot too, right? You know, it's like people saying, man, you have to invest for the future. And that's absolutely right. But it's not necessarily, I mean, you have to think of yourself for yourself and for your family, and not necessarily worry about what it is or comparing yourself to the other people out there. But it is true that if you are more well prepared than everybody else out there, it's very much like running away from the bear in the camp. You don't have to be the fastest person in the camp. You just have to be faster than everybody else is out there, or than the slowest people are out there. You just have to not be the slowest person in the camp, is basically what it comes down to. So doing something is better than nothing, because there's plenty of people out there who are doing nothing. Thanks again, Matthew. Very cool of you. Hey, thank you very much, Lord Humongous, for the $10. That's very cool of you. I appreciate it. Simon has a heart. That's what I love about him. Well, thank you, Lord Humongous, man. I appreciate it. You know, I try to do my part, you know. I mean, for a long time, there was nothing. I mean, there was always something that you can do, but for a long time, I felt like there was really nothing I could do. And now I try to do stuff, you know. I mean, you know, I try to come out here on the channel. We try to have a conversation so all of us could understand the economy for what is best for us and the decisions that we need to make. That's what the goal of this channel is for everybody to understand it from their own perspective. So, you know, that's what we do here. But now that the channel has benefited me as much as it has, I try to share that a little bit, you know, and try to, you know, help out in my community in different ways. You know, especially when it comes to the homeless. You know, a lot of people, they don't want to give the homeless any kind of effort, and I don't blame them. I don't blame people for that at all. A lot of times, you know, the mental health issues that come from the homeless have such a deterioration to not only the communication, but just the relationship within the society, that it makes it very difficult for people to be sympathetic or empathetic or anything towards homeless people. They actually just kind of like turn their view away from them and pretend like they're not even there. You know, I'm in a small community here, so you can't help it but to recognize these people on a daily basis. Like, they see me every day going into work. They see me out here making videos. Eventually, you know, they know you by name. And so when you start communicating and talking with the homeless community out there, you realize like how hard it really is for these people. You know, I mean, it's easy to say, you know, you can't can't pitch a rock without hitting a damn help wanted sign. But it isn't a matter of just having a job. It's also having like the mental health in order to even just be able to get a job, or to deal with people in general. I mean, you're out here fighting, like, you know, the homeless out here fighting for survival. You know, it comes into a constant struggle of being in a fight or flight mode. And then pretty soon, like, you can't communicate with somebody on any kind of level other than like, what can I get from you? What can I take from you? Or what is it that you're trying to take from me? Or what's going on here in that kind of aspect? There is no like idea of like hopes and dreams and beliefs and ideas as far as like, you know, what a better life could look like. It's just a matter of like minute to minute, you know, what's going to happen next. And that's very tough existence to be in. You know, so, you know, there's not much that one can really do to try and get people. Like, you can't get somebody off the street who's been on the street for 15, 20 years. That's it. They're there. That's the life that they're going to be in. And so it's not much you can do, like, to help, other than sit down and have a conversation, right? I mean, you know, to treat somebody like a human for a few minutes, offer them some food or something like that. but I think that's like really the only thing that can be done, is to actually try and treat somebody like with some decency and some respect and try and give them some dignity. And that's, that's something that I try and help out with as much as I can. But it's very difficult. Like I had a very misunderstanding of homeless, um, for a very long time. And then when you start getting closer in life to like, oh shit, I may end up on the streets myself if I don't get my act together. And then you realize, man, you might even be just like, you're like a month away from it. Like 30 days. Like if I lost my job, if I broke my arm and couldn't go to work, if got sick, something, you're like 30 days from the street. And you realize how close you really are, man, you start going and thinking, man, what is this going to be like? And that's not a place anybody who's never been there, I don't think that's something that anybody really wants to live. And I'm sure a few of you out there have lived that life. And yeah, so that's something that I'm trying to try and not only understand a little bit better, but then try to do my part to help out as best I can. And like I said, I don't know if there's much that one can do. I mean, if you've only been on the streets for a month, then yeah, there's a lot that can be done for you. I mean, you got a life that, that can be lived. But after 15, 20 years of being on the streets and fighting every day of your life to survive, like, I doubt you're gonna have like the typical 9 to 5er and be able to just consistently, be in a position in which that you can, live that sort of life, because it's tough out there. I mean, I've communicated with some of these people, talked with them, and it is not healthy out there. It's not pretty. All right, let's talk about economics. Living in progressive Portland, Oregon, it's because of secularism and rejection of Christianity and God. You can't even see the speedometer. He must be talking about his car. Clear the corridor campaign in Oregon. Just because you doesn't mean you have to be dirty. Absolutely right. You're very, very right about that. And it's kind of interesting. I don't want to drop names because there's plenty of people here in my local community who watch my videos, so I don't want to say any names. But there's a couple of the people in the homeless community here who have high respect. I have a lot of my respect. They make sure that people don't leave garbage laying around. They're very polite, very, respectful, very, they're very cool. Like, come up and like, even when it came to like the lumber yard here, it's just like, hey man, it looks like somebody's trying to take some of your merchandise. It's piled up behind here. He comes and tells us about it and stuff. Stops people from like, vandalizing or doing stuff like that. I mean, there's some really cool people out there that I really appreciate. And so anyway. Moving on. And I guess what it comes down to is like, he's a good guy, and he's not like, I mean, he's somebody you would hang out with, Uneducated Economist. Send the homeless to the White House lawn with tents. Yeah, I don't know. What would that do for it? I mean, other than just being in Washington, D.C. Heated warehouses that operate starting at midnight. They'll keep the homeless warm and fed. It was funny because I was talking to my mom about that article before I came out here, and she talked about, yeah, well, maybe all those people, maybe people could live in the warehouses or something. But so yeah, that's what we could do with all these warehouses. Gold and silver is money, and it's very real. Always will be. I know homeless people with better street smarts than PhD graduates. Yeah, I do too. Bruh, start talking to us about the root of the problem, the banking system running our country. Well, I think that's a symptom of the problem, right? Because the real problem is that it's cyclical, right? And that we don't really know how to deal with that, in the sense that you have to go through that cycle, right? And if you read Cantillon's essay, I mean, he gives many examples of it taking place. I mean, it's like he talked about it in China and Rome and all kinds. I mean, he just talked about all these different times in history where the flow of money coming into a system, the new money coming in, then the ending of that new money coming in, the diving into luxuries, and then the fall into poverty. And it happens like over and over again, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So as this cycle takes place, and some people are moving into wealth and some people have to move into the poverty, because you end up with the separation of classes as this cycle continues. The people who are in fear of losing their wealth, right? They've acquired it, they're on that side of it, they certainly don't want to be in poverty, and they're worried about losing that money and falling into poverty, right? Well, eventually it will happen. It's going to happen to everybody at this side. Not if, but when, and if you're not paying attention to it, it's easy to happen, fall from the wealth to poverty. But as that starts to take place, the people who are in holding of their wealth still, not in poverty yet, are going to bitch and complain about whether or not they can hold on to their money, and they'll be pointing at the elected officials out there saying, this is your fault that I'm losing my money. Or if you're in poverty, it's their fault that you don't have anything. It's, I mean, one way or the other. It depends on what side of the wedge that you're on. But ultimately, it doesn't have anything to do with the politicians. Like, I mean, they make a lot of noise, and they do have some cause and effects to it that do kind of reflect into your life. But ultimately, they have very little impact on the actual cycle of things, because that's going to happen regardless of whether or not they're there or not. So blaming like a particular group isn't going to help. In fact, putting blame in any direction is going to be counterintuitive to the success of whatever it is that you're looking towards. What you really have to do is, even if it's something that you disagree with, you have to look at it and say, okay, well, this is the issue, this is the thing that's happening here. I have to see the cause and effects from that, because even though I don't like what's going on here, it's not necessarily up for me to decide. So I have to see what the cause and effects are from that, and where I can best position my money to take advantage of that situation. And just like this green movement thing, like, I am not a believer in the whole idea of it, like we all have to drive electric cars and be worried about carbon footprints and all that stuff. Like, I am not somebody who takes in information to try and believe in this thing. It's just not for me. But it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, right? I mean, it's not up to me to decide this. I mean, there's obviously plenty of people, including politicians, who are going to be pushing for this whole green thing, right? Like, I don't even know how to call it, because that's the only thing I see it as, this green thing, right? But it's not up to me to decide whether or not it's going to happen. What it is up to me to decide is where it is that I can put my money to take the best advantage of that situation that's coming. And that's where I see the cross-laminated timber industry. For one, I'm in the lumber industry, so I see it happening. And then for two, they're going to be pushing it as a green product. So great, here's this new building industry that never had really existed on a grand scale before, that's about ready to take off. Yeah, I think I'm going to be putting my money towards something like that. So that's how I kind of approach it. But I could be blaming, like, politicians, saying they're pushing for this green movement and it's going to ruin everything. Whatever. I mean, so be it. I mean, if that's the way you want to look at things, that's fine. But I'm going to look towards where I can put money to make money, right? Yeah. How long have we been out here? 1 hour and 57 minutes. 600 of you out here. 500 likes. 564 likes. All right. You should be driving a horse to work. Electric is just the next step. It's cheaper and faster. I tell you, if I could ride a horse to work, I would. In fact, I was telling my boss when when my vehicles were breaking down, 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I didn't have any money. And I'm thinking, you know what, that's it. I don't even want a car anymore. I'm going to ride a horse. I'm going to ride a horse to work, and I'm going to tie him up out back. And that's going to be my ride to work from now on, because then I don't have to worry about a car or insurance or anything else like that. I was going to ride a horse. Simon, there is a documentary, The Money Matters. The Money Matters or The Money Makers? on YouTube from the 1990s talk about the money cycles since the Roman Empire, and it's all because of the modern times central banks. It's okay. It's it can't always be about the central banks because there wasn't always a central bank, right? So money cycles happen with or without central banks. So I'm not sure if that's what you were trying to say in the comment, but I will check out the videos if I can find the time and remember to do it. But it's the cycle of new money, not necessarily the system, but just new money, right? Whether you're using clamshells or fiat currency or gold and silver, it's the flow of money and how the people react with that flow of new money coming in, right? That's really where the problem is because that new flow of money that comes in, the people who have access to it, they want to spend that money. They want to spend that money and get things for it. They want to enjoy their standard of living increase. But they don't want to spend it on higher priced goods. And so as that new money comes into the system, it starts finding its way into the foreign imports, the luxurious items that are cheaper, that are made far from a further distance. That right there, that dive into luxuries, that is what causes the problem, right? It doesn't matter what the system is, right? It doesn't matter if it's a gold system, fiat currency system, seashells, it doesn't matter. Once the money starts to concentrate, the dive into luxuries is really where the problem starts to exist. And that is the problem. Like if you want to point out a problem, it's luxuries. It's the diving into luxuries. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have like decent things in your life. Like that's fine. And it doesn't mean that people shouldn't enjoy like, you know, the success from all the hard work that they put into things. Like that's what people should do. I mean, they should enjoy themselves. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, but what I am saying is that when enough people do that and they start moving into luxuries, that's what starts creating the problem, right? That's where the real problem is. And that's why it's always cyclical and it's always going to happen. You can't change the way this is going to go because then you would have to tell people, guess what, man? When you make a lot of money, save it, live like you're broke, don't spend any of it, and then when you die, leave it to your kids and tell them to do the exact same thing with it. Like, who would do that, right? Nobody's going to do that. As soon as you have the money, you're going to want to spend it and you're going to want to enjoy that money. And so that's why it's always going to be cyclical. It's never going to change no matter what. I don't care. 1,000 years from now, you're still going to have the same thing happening again. Now, I shouldn't really say that because there could be a manipulated system of digital currencies that might be able to combat that whole cycle thing, but we've never really seen any example of it yet, so therefore we can't really use it. So, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, but I don't know. Alrighty, $500 to charge your electric car to go 160 miles in Europe. Businesses in Ireland and Germany, electric bill for 40 days have gone up to 11,000 to 12,000. Electric is in trouble. Yeah, well, I can tell you this much. If electricity is being paid for on that kind of level, then those who provide electricity are going to start supplying it to them because they're going to want to take advantage of those high prices. Give it some time and you're going to see the prices come back down. It's not, I mean, there is an energy issue and it's going to get bad, but for every, like, necessity is the mother of invention. People will figure it out. That's why it's not going to be a problem that lasts forever. Everybody, I mean, a lot of people might want to believe it's going to last forever, but it's not going to last forever, right? I mean, it's going to be really tough for some people for a very long time, especially those who weren't prepared. But it will correct itself. I mean, just like, you know, there was people who were telling me that 2x4s were going to stay at $10 forever, so that people would have to buy expensive homes forever. I mean, people were telling me this, that a 2x4 would never be under $10 again. Well, here we are, we're at 500 per thousand. I mean, I've heard of people picking up 2x4s under $5 a piece. They're getting them like, you know, into the low fours, even down into $3. I knew it was going to happen. I mean, nobody buys 2x4s at $10 a piece. I mean, the only people who were buying them there were the people who absolutely had to and had no other choice. But anybody who could delay it or hold back or just wait a little bit of time, they were going to get lumber at a much cheaper price. And when you had 2x4s at $10 a piece, man, the mills were trying to pump out as much as they could. So those who supplied were trying to supply, and it's just a matter of time before the prices came back down. You're going to see the same thing happen with energy. I mean, it's hard to see that, and there's a lot of reasons out there why people would say, no, you're wrong about it, but I'm not. It's just a matter of time. If you get something that's doubled in price or tripled in price, just give it a little bit of time, because you're going to find some people out there who want to take advantage of that and get that money, and they're going to start providing you with the product or service. That's the way capitalism works. Let's see here. Humans are very adaptive, and basically you become feral. Energy stocks, anyone? Most people can't afford it. But I will read the whole document. You mess with AC, I will go to war. Well, guys, I'm going to give it like another 5-10 minutes here, and then I'm going to go and meet up with my wife and go have some lunch. Dang, I've got an air show in my backyard, and an A-10 Warthog just flew by. Well, that's cool. Let's see here. What city in Washington have you visited? What cities? Oh, man, I don't know. All kinds of cities. I don't know. I've been all over the place. Let me try to think. Where's a cool place in Washington to go to? Where did I don't know. The peninsula is like, I mean, I just kind of like my local area around here just because it's already kind of touristy and fun and lots of viewing areas and stuff. So, I've been all over the place. Go up to Ledbetter Point. It's at the very end of the peninsula. Give you a nice trip all the way up to Washington Coast there. I'm sure you wish you could have bacon instead. Oh, yeah, who doesn't like bacon? You'll laugh out loud. Yes, did they run the chain gun for you? Well, you guys are all just babbling. Okay, talking with each other. Okay, let's see here. 1, read the Wikipedia on the history of banking. France is turning their nuclear power plants back on so they can get some wealth from the Gazprom exit from natural gas exports. Yeah. Let's see. The Constitution of the United States that the currency of the U.S. will be backed by gold. Do you guys think their reason is not right now is because of the politicians? Yeah, the Constitution does say that. It's Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says that no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender in payment of debt. Now, I'm kind of curious about that because that ended up being a congressional thing that they gave the power of printing money or creating money to the Federal Reserve. And so I do wonder, is that even a power that Congress can give out? Like, it's within the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. No state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender in payment of debt. So are fiat currency even legal tender to pay debts with? I mean, is the only thing that you could really pay off a debt with like a silver eagle or say pre-64 change? I mean, that was the stuff that was legally gold and silver, right? So I do have to wonder, like, what is the legalities of consistently having the Federal Reserve? Like, I could understand a particular, like, they were only supposed to be chartered for 100 years, I think is what it was, and then the Federal Reserve was supposed to be disbanded or whatever thing was. But that didn't take place, right? They're like the permanent fixture within our economy now, and they're not part of the government. They're just like this private banking institution that has some elected officials to it. So now I do wonder, it was just like, is the Federal Reserve and everything that we have based off of and all the taxes that we pay and all the backing of the U.S. Treasuries and all that other stuff that happens here, is it even any of that even remotely legal? Is it even possible to, be held accountable for any of this stuff? Because ultimately, Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says that we can only use gold and silver for this. I don't know. Anyway. Ever since we got off the gold standard, we have had a lot of inflation. Yeah, because, well, and it's not like there was never a time where there wasn't inflation in the past. I mean, there was, inflationary scenarios that had happened, but when you have gold and silver as a consistent monetary based metal, then you do have consistent prices happening. The problem with it is again, with the Cantillon effect. You have concentrations of wealth that ends up coming from something like that. And again, to me, that's not a big deal. Like, it's a big deal for other people out there, but it's not a big deal if you recognize it for what it is and that it's happening. If you see this cycle taking place where the concentration of wealth is happening, you know that at some point there's going to be a bust and that everything is going to fall and that this concentration of wealth will then be redistributed throughout all the people again, and then the whole system starts over. But this cycle has to be understood for what it is and not something that you can compete against. Well, most people don't like getting ruined, right? They don't want to see businesses like do really well and then all of a sudden the business cycle is over and all these businesses go out of business and people end up starving and all kinds of stuff like that because they didn't take care of holding on to something for the future, right? They didn't take any care into that. They just kept thinking the business would last forever. So when you have this like business cycle happening and it's constantly breaking people and screwing everything up, then you end up with the people demanding that they have some sort of consistency. And that's where the Federal Reserve stepped in and said, hey, we're here to provide you with some sort of consistency. And we all know what happened from there. I lived through this inflation. A cafeteria lunch in 1983 was 25 cents. I remember that. For status quo is the XRP. What time is it? It is 12:49. Alrighty, guys. I think I'm going to bail out. We've been out here for a little over 2 hours. You are so awesome. 568 of you, 660 thumbs up, 16 thumbs up, 700, I wish, $73 in super chats because you guys are just so awesome and generous. I cannot thank you guys enough for all the support that you do for the channel. Really appreciate it. One last comment because it has capitalism written here. It says, capitalism is not about making the customer happy. It's about how rich can you make the businesses. I very much disagree with that. Capitalism is all about getting the best products at the cheapest price to the consumer for the most profit that is possible. That's what capitalism is about. All right. Thank you, everybody. You have a wonderful day. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.